and off we go. So, life at IMS during a pandemic. The first thing I've said to everybody over the last little while is that I've never managed a business during a pandemic, and I'm sure most of you have never done so either. It's presented some very unique challenges, and if I'm honest, when this all kicked off back in March of last year, I had absolutely no idea how we were going to get through this. And I'm sure that's been the same for not only marine surveyors, but people in all sorts of other businesses. At the time of talking to you now, the pandemic is out of control in the UK. We've had nearly 100,000 deaths. I know it's bad in the States too, and elsewhere in other parts of the world, but we're in lockdown. We're having to operate from home. But last year presented not only some challenges, but there was some very positive things to come out of last year. Let me just share some of those with you. So I describe this as the toughest ever year. I think I've been in business for 40 years, and I've never had to deal with a scenario that was presented to us. The year started off out to Baltimore this time last year, and our first Vancouver conference. Both of those were held in early 2020. The Vancouver conference actually concluded just before lockdown began in the UK, so I was rushing to get back. Both of those were hugely successful, and then of course lockdown hit. But what we saw in the UK, and it seems also in the States and other parts of the world, the strangest phenomenon occurred. Marine surveyors got very, very busy, and I mean very busy. One of our board members, who is in his 70s, is desperate to retire. He tries to do only one survey a week these days because he doesn't want to do any more than that. And he found he could do 9 surveys a week. The phone was ringing off the hook. So what we had was this huge outpouring as the pandemic kicked in, people desperate to buy boats. I think also the sales of motorhomes were huge. Of course, a motorhome doesn't necessarily need a survey doing on it, but boats do. And marine surveyors got very busy in many parts of the world. Certainly, James told me he was rushed off his feet last year. I hope for many of you that was the case too. Many of the surveyors I spoke to actually said they recorded a record trading year in 2020, which is quite remarkable. And when I looked at some stats the other day, I was astonished to see that just in the States, leisure craft sales boomed by 13%. So extraordinary times. Certainly in the UK, brokers have started to run low on stock. I don't know what that means for surveyors this year. If there aren't boats to buy, that might present more of a challenge for the surveying profession, but we'll see. So when all of this kicked off, myself and my small management team, we had to get together. We had to develop a COVID-19 strategy, and that blossomed. And we continued after lockdown. We came back to the office for a short space of time until we got locked down again. So it's been very, very spasmodic, and we've had to adapt to a new way of working. But here's some of the good news from our end. Our membership grew strongly actually last year to our highest ever level. Got a slide on membership coming up for you. I'll tell you a bit more about that. The 2 professional qualifications we run, we had more interest in those last year than I think we've ever had before. And again, the number of students studying our professional qualifications in marine surveying has reached record numbers. We put together a whole range of online seminars, which the last time I looked, I think we attracted about 600 delegates. We covered a whole raft of things. I think there were about 14 in the end across the year. Typically, we'd pick a specific niche topic and get an expert presenter, come online just as we're doing today and talk about that topic. We certainly had one on rigs and masts that attracted over 100. The one on small craft installation and engines that attracted 100 delegates as well. They became hugely popular. One of the challenges was transferring the face-to-face courses that the IIMS runs. And we managed to transfer most of them successfully to an online environment, not entirely, but we've made good progress in that area. The report magazine, we'll talk a bit about that in a minute, really flourished last year. We put out some huge issues at the end of last year. And if you don't read it, it's freely available, and I'll show you where you can pick up a copy in a moment. As I mentioned, we made team working from home work. We use Zoom every day. We try and get online as a team at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, talk about what we've all done during the day. It'll never replace face-to-face, and in my opinion, it won't replace working from an office environment. home working does require some different motivation, shall we say, and it's done in a different way. And most importantly for me, the organisation remained profitable, and we had a very strong trading year last year. I think the most successful event of last year was acquiring the freehold, the purchase of Murrell's house. Some of you might have seen this image before. I've certainly presented it before when I've been over in Baltimore. This is our permanent headquarters. We were there as a tenant for 10 years, and we actually bought the property from our landlord. It's a very attractive building. It's got a history going back 500 years. It's a place of significant historical interest in the local area, and it's a lovely place to be. We've had to do some essential maintenance work to it, which we budgeted for. We've done half of that work. Most of the windows you're looking at there are rotten, so they're all made of wood. And because it's a grade 2 listed property, we can only replace like with like. So we've got a carpenter at the moment who's preparing those. It's being hand produced, and those new windows will go in soon. So we're very proud of our new premises, permanent HQ, and that's helped to really underpin, I think, the future of the organisation with a very valuable asset. The not so good, there isn't really much actually that we didn't do well last year, but we certainly came under huge pressure with our certifying authority. If you're not familiar with a certifying authority, we are one of 5 organisations who are licensed to code vessels that are used commercially up to 24 metres. And the reason it came under pressure is because lockdown happened and suddenly people couldn't charter vessels. So we certainly went off a cliff revenue-wise in March and April. It did recover, and we ended the year quite strongly. But that was definitely a challenging area. And as I said, our face-to-face training came to an end. So we had to last year shelve a couple of programs. I'll talk a bit about those a little later. And the one thing that I think we all miss is that networking. You know, when you go out for the coffee or the sticky buns that James always sets up when we're in Baltimore, and you step out of the room and you network with other people. That's much harder to do in this environment. Our RMCR and IIMS programs, I'll explain what those are in a minute, were halted last year. And sad to report, most of the team caught COVID, myself included. We've all come through it. One of our colleagues spent 4 or 5 days in hospital. That was not pleasant. She seems to have made a strong recovery though. And if you've not had it, trust me, you really don't want it. So please do all you can to avoid it. It's really a nasty disease. We had a surge in new applications last year. I always wonder what it is we do. And of course, the trouble is we all do some marketing for our businesses. If only you knew which bit of your marketing really worked. It isn't obvious sometimes. So I don't know what was the main driver behind that. But the reality is that we had a strong surge. Cam, I think about 160 new applications from memory, which was quite remarkable. And we're nudging 1,000 members worldwide. I'm quite sure now that the next set of figures we look at in February, we'll be able to say we've gone past 1,000. That's a bit of a landmark for us, and I'm delighted with our progress. We've certainly put on a lot of new affiliate members. Very important that we have new younger surveyors coming into the organisation. As with most surveying organisations, we have an older profile. That's to be expected, and we desperately need some youngsters coming in to take on from the old guard in the next year or two. And I think what we saw more than anything else last year was an increase in using the membership network. When international travel, borders got closed, surveyors couldn't move freely around the world, certainly couldn't move freely around Europe. People were suddenly starting to say, well, I can't take that job on. I'll use the IIMS network, and surveyors were passing on business to other member surveyors. And if that's one thing that IIMS can do, I think we should be proud of that. So just a few things you can do if you're not a member of the Institute. As I said, you're most welcome to take part in all that we do. There are benefits of membership. I'm not here to promote those today, but there's a lot you can do as a non-member, and I would just urge you to reach out. You can access, download and read the report magazine. I've got a slide, I think the next slide, which shows you where you can find the report magazine. The last issue was 116 pages, the one before that I think 112, awful lot of reading material, and absolutely worth its weight in gold. We've been nominated for an award as Trade Publication of the Year in 2020. Don't know if we'll win it. Doesn't matter if we win it or not. The fact is, it's nice to be recognised by others out there. We built what I believe to be the only international database of safety briefings. I can't find anywhere else on the web. We've built that. It's free to access. You can go and download all sorts of safety briefings, accidents, incident reports that have been published around the world over the last 4 or 5 years. We've got podcasts on the website. We've got over 2,000 news stories and articles on the IIMS website, absolutely worth having a look at. And the YouTube channel, where a lot of the content we'll record today and tomorrow will end up. There's over 225 videos, I think, the last time we looked. We try and make those all available. It doesn't cost anything to pop onto YouTube. You may find something to help you in your learning as you keep developing. And I would encourage you to follow the IIMS LinkedIn feed. The last time I looked, about 6,300 followers, and also our Twitter feeds. We do post regularly, and again, it doesn't cost anything to take part. So I talked about the report magazine. So this is where you find it on the IIMS website. That's the IIMS homepage. It's on the top bar there, media. Under there, you'll see the report magazine. If you click on the link, the report magazine, you can read the most current issue and about 30 back issues as well. You can download those in PDF format, which is most popular, or e-reader format if you like to read it in like a magazine style. Doesn't matter what line of surveying you're in, there's a whole raft of stuff in there, be it small craft, commercial ship. I would encourage you to go and download it. One of the things we started a few years ago was developing a whole series of handy guides. I challenged a number of more senior surveyors with many years experience to write about their specialism, their specialist subject. It all started as a bit of a gimmick in a way, but I had the offer of 30 manuscripts, and we've now managed to bring 25 to market. Those are now published and available, and we are about to launch the 26th, which is coming up. Metacentric stability, the inclining experiment, heel and rolling test, quite a technical publication, but they're priced inexpensively. I didn't want to produce a whole series of expensive books that no one could afford, so we've tried to make them available for all people rather than just a few people. Those two are available in PDF or paperback formats, and we've had very strong sales actually over the last couple of years. I'm just sort of picking up a couple of chat messages here. James, I'm just going to mute your microphone, and forgive me, and on we go. The professional qualifications that IIMS run are truly recognised around the world. We run two. One is in yacht and small craft surveying. The other is in cargo and commercial ship marine surveying. They're all run on a distance learning basis. Last year we had a record intake. To do the course, you need to take 8 modules. So you take 4 core modules, and then you can choose 4 more from the selection of other. The last time I looked, we had about 35 modules for students to choose from. There's about 220 students who are now actively studying with IIMS. We reviewed many of the modules in the last year. It's important to keep those updated. Certainly modules 1, an introduction to the industry, has been updated. Module 2, materials and corrosion, we've updated. Report writing, we've updated. So we also put a new one in, business management. I always think one of the key things that surveyors do struggle with is how to manage their own small business. So there's a module on that. We've run freshers seminars. Those have been new in the last year. So after a new intake, we have 4 intakes a year. They come in quarterly. We've just had one in January. We invite those who are joining the program to come and join us online. We'll get them to talk to a couple of tutors. They always want to know, well, how many words should I write for my assignment? There's no right or wrong answer to that, but it's a question everybody asks. And the tutors then give some practical feedback to them. We've also run some online tutor seminars. So again, we might pick a specific module. We did one on the GRP, FRP module, and the guy who is the tutor, assessor and marker made himself available. We were online for an hour and a half talking about the ins and outs of FRP. And then exciting for us, one of the things I think has always been missing from our yacht and small craft professional qualification is a practical module. And with COVID around, that's been a little bit hard to organise. But on the south coast of England, we have a facility called the Boat Building Academy, and I worked with them for much of last year. And just before Christmas, 10 days before Christmas, we managed to get 6 delegates into a COVID secure environment. They were there for 7 days, so residential course. They got their hands dirty. They were playing with wooden boats. They were playing with GRP repairs, actually doing the repairs, inspecting repairs. I went down on one day, did a talk about report writing. We had someone there also who was doing something on how to measure thickness with an ultrasonic thickness gauge. We went down into the harbour and got ourselves sort of a bit wet, and it was good fun. And the feedback from that has been hugely positive. We'll certainly look to run that again this year. I'm hoping it might appeal to overseas students to come as well, but fantastic, because it is hard if you come from a non-boat building background to get that practical hands-on experience. A little bit about the Marine Surveying Academy. Probably most of you are not familiar with the Marine Surveying Academy, or MSA to give it its name for short. The Marine Surveying Academy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Institute, and it's where we put our third-party training initiatives, things that don't happily sit within the IIMS as a membership organisation. And let me just admit Nicole. Or maybe not. There we are, she's on her way in. We launched something over 5 years ago now for IMCA, the International Marine Contractors Association, who had a desperate problem with people who were getting on board offshore assets to do an audit, an inspection on them, not a survey, an audit and an inspection. And they were concerned that nobody really knew who these people were. So we worked with IMCA to put together a whole program. It's called the Accredited Vessel Inspector Program. And despite COVID-19, it has made it difficult to get out and do some of these inspections. Can't be done remotely. You do need to get face-to-face for the majority of it. And we've had huge success with it. We've had over 600 applications over 5 years, and 515 have now got the badge. We started the 5-year revalidation program with the early adopters in the middle of last year. I think we put about 50 or 60 people now through revalidation. That's all being done online. We can do it online. We've developed a half-day program for people to come through. It updates them with all sorts of information, brings them up to speed with what's happening in the marketplace. We talk about some actual real-life reporting that we've seen that is not so good, explain why it's not so good, and it's a great success. The one thing I suppose I'm very proud of is that it's helped to clean up what was a bit of a Wild West, really, as far as looking at some of these offshore installations is concerned. And Registered Marine Coatings Inspector qualification, that's really essentially aimed at people who are looking at super yacht paint systems. And that was very much a face-to-face program. But as you can imagine, that's presented a bit of a challenge recently. And we've had to push that into the long grass for now. We are working on how we can actually get this into an online format. And I think by the end of the first quarter of this year, we'll be able to do that. The IIMS qualification is also suspended. This was, again, a face-to-face week-long course for people who were looking at subsea pipe insulation and corrosion in particular. So again, clearly we've not been able to run that, and that's not going to easily transfer to a face-to-face environment. Always like to talk a bit about the external representation we're involved with. There's always a lot going on. We do push our weight into all sorts of areas. We've worked extensively recently over the last 18 months actually now with the Australian government. We gave evidence at a hearing to review the performance of AMSA, which is the Australian Maritime Regulator. I found myself being interviewed in the press, national TV and radio. It was all quite exciting and very dramatic, but it was great to be able to bring the surveyor's perspective to the Australian government and to point out some of the shortcomings with AMSA. There's a lot going on there now, and I think the outcome still isn't known, but I think the outcome will be much more positive. I have a role as chair of the Professional Standards Working Group, which is within the MCA Certifying Authority Committee. So we bring all the certifying authorities together in the UK, we chew the cud, we're looking at a certification scheme and so on. Very live topic for us at the moment. You'll all be aware probably that we've now completed Brexit. The United Kingdom has left the EU bloc. It's causing major headaches. It took only a matter of 10 days before the first problem reared its head. And we've got issues now with British flagged vessels wanting to charter their boats in Greece or Greek waters, Croatian waters, France, and possibly other countries. So we're having to mount a high-level lobbying campaign, the British government and the MCA, to try and get them to help us through this one. And finally, we are in the middle of negotiations to acquire the Institute of Diagnostic Engineers. That's a very different departure for us, but one of our oldest IIMS members, Geoffrey Casciani-Wood, is actually their president. A little bit on new product development. We don't stand still. There's always something new. And I'm pleased to say that we will be announcing on the 1st of February formally a new professional qualification. This is a standalone qualification in marine corrosion. It'll consist of 10 modules. We plan to run the first program in June. All be done online. People will be tested online on each module as we go along. You won't need to do all 10 to get the qualification. We're just finalising the details now. If you're a small craft surveyor, you'll probably need to do 6 of the modules. If you're commercial ship, possibly 7. There is some crossover between the modules. But as I say, hope to be announcing that in the next few days. The Marine Surveying Practitioner Scheme, some of you will have seen me in Baltimore last year talk about the scheme. We've just shelved it, not indefinitely. It's really, really important that we develop this international minimum standard for marine surveyors, and we are committed to delivering that. But it's certainly not going to be anytime soon. I suspect it'll be the end of this year before we move that bit of work forward. And finally, certification for coding examiners. That's been a really challenging piece of work, trying to bring all of the certifying authorities together. We all have different business models. We all do things slightly differently. But again, there is a need for us all to play on a level playing field. So our aim is to put people through a minimum entry level that makes sure that anyone who is doing coding, and I would say coding is rather different to surveying, because what you're doing is you are looking at a vessel and you are assessing it against a regulation, which is called MGN 280, which has been developed by the MCA, and you are having to decide as a coding examiner whether or not that vessel meets the code. So it's a bit of specialist skill, that, and I don't quite know when we might get that going. We were signing an MOU with all the certifying authorities as we went into lockdown back in March. As I say, not quite sure where that one's going to end up. Oops, jumped ahead. Just a couple of challenges that I think are facing marine surveyors. Please stay safe whilst COVID-19 is around us. I know I'm stating the blindingly obvious, but I do feel that we have a responsibility to just remind surveyors, be sensible, do those detailed risk assessments. Maybe your risk assessments need to be a bit more detailed than they used to be. Make sure you wear your enhanced PPE. Remote surveys is something that is taxing a lot of surveyors at the moment. Personally, I think the jury is still out. It's a bit of a hot potato. I'm not sure that a small craft surveyor can do a remote survey. That would worry me. I'm sure it would certainly worry the insurance companies as well. There are certainly aspects of doing a big ship survey, that could be done remotely. If you wanted just to review paperwork and certificates and so on, that can definitely be done remotely. But just be a bit aware of remote surveys at the moment. And the one thing we get more complaints about, I'll leave you with this thought really, is just working outside your area of competency. Especially at the moment when there's been this latent demand for marine surveyors. Very easy just to take a job, and before you know it, it's not until you're on the job you realise that you are tackling something that you're not fully conversant with, or you're not fully experienced and skilled to do. And taking on too many jobs. I mentioned the partly retired surveyor in the UK who could easily do 9 jobs a week now, doesn't want to do that, and I have no doubt if he took on 9 jobs he would fall flat on his face. Just trying to output the reports alone would probably kill him and do him in. So please stick to your areas of competency. I hope that's good and sound advice, and not teaching you to suck eggs, but that's the reason why we see complaints reaching the Institute. So stay safe. Thanks for listening. So I'm around here hosting for the next couple of days with James. I'm going to try and make sure we cue in all the speakers, and I'm hoping that Bill Ackley is hovering in the background, ready to step into my shoes.